And joining us now is Justin Wolfers, professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan. I think to say this is a mess, Justin, is an understatement. So now you have the president saying he's going to implement new tariffs, calling for a worldwide 15% tariff. I'm just wondering, given the Supreme Court ruling, can he do that, or is that just a lot of talk? And what would be impacted this time if these tariffs go into effect?
Yeah, so it is a mess. You know, we've had 5 different tariff regimes in a 25-hour period. If you ask me what the tariff rate is, I have to start by asking you what time it is. It's ridiculous. Look, so what the Supreme Court struck down was what were called the Emergency Powers Act tariffs, which is basically any time the president pointed at a country and said, I'm putting a tariff on you, China, Canada, Australia, the European Union. That got struck down. What the president then came back with is a new power based on a balance of payments crisis. This new power allows him to raise tariffs as high as 15%. He's hit that ceiling. He initially said 10%, he went to 15%. Here's the important thing. He's only allowed to do that for 150 days and then has to go back to Congress to get it reauthorized. Congress is not going to reauthorize it. So this is purely a stopgap measure. It saves face, but it doesn't save any economic benefits. Why is that? Because if a permanent tariff is a bad idea, guess what? A temporary tariff is actually even worse.
Why
because
is
it means
that?
you get all the
Because
costs of
businesses can't plan?
Exactly. And worse than that, right? So you could call China and say, I demand this, that, and the other. And China could say, but your tariffs are going away in 150 days. You don't have any extra leverage out of that. I'm not going to build a new factory in America based on a tariff that will be gone before I've poured the concrete on it. So we're going to get all the costs of the tariffs, none of the benefits whatsoever.
Where does the decision from the Supreme Court leave those previously negotiated framework trade agreements and also the international credibility of the United States now?
Yeah, so it's been a big question, what happens to those agreements? And actually, it's a very funny answer. There basically aren't any agreements. What happened through that whole period, remember 90 deals in 90 days, is Trump would call someone into the Oval Office, you know, the prime minister of some country, and they would meet behind closed doors, and they would come out and they'd hold up a big billboard that had a whole lot of bullet points and say, this is happening and that's happening and so on. But I then did and that would make the papers the next day. I then do the next part of the homework, which is to say, did that lead to an actual deal, a real agreement? Can I see signatures on anything here? And in almost every case, there was nothing ever signed. This whole thing was much more reality TV than it was real economics. And so you could say to me, what's happened to those agreements? Well, first of all, Trump himself breached many of them because he'd signed the agreement, or he didn't sign it, he'd announced the agreement and then add new tariffs. And the second thing is, there's not really an agreement there anyway. So not much is going to change. No one had been trusting us. They're still not going to be trusting us.
We did see the value of the dollar drop this morning in the face of this tariff confusion. How will that slip affect wallets of everyday Americans, will it?
Yeah, so when the dollar falls in value, that then means it takes more of our dollars to buy stuff from abroad. So if you want to put this in the context of affordability and affording your everyday groceries and the things you buy from abroad, everything from abroad just got a little bit more expensive. Today's movement is interesting, but actually if you look at what's happened throughout the Trump presidency so far, the value of the dollar's fallen quite substantially. And that is one of the reasons why everything costs a little more than perhaps it feels like it should.
Sigh. That's all we can do at the moment. Lots out of our control. Justin Wolfers, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time, my friend.